Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Law. This is your legal light. It is your help law. Today, World Human Rights Day. It's a day celebrated annually on December 10, and it commemorates the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. Take note of the emphasis of the year, because I'll say something about it. It focuses on fundamental human rights and liberties for all individuals, regardless of their nationality, gender, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, or religion. Since 1948, how far do you think we are doing in Africa, in Ghana, in your home? How far are you doing with the matters of gender equity? There's a lot of gender violence. Are you part of those who are involved in it? We're examining the impact of gender violence, gender-based violence, and the sanctions. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. Welcome to The Law. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is The Law. It's your legal light. It's your help law. Today we are dealing with gender violence, gender-based violence, the impact on the persons that suffer it and all of us, and what are the sanctions that can help to reduce the incidence of such violence. In the studio, we have just the right people to help us in this discussion. Dr. Charity Binka is Chairperson, African Women Leaders Network, Ghana National Chapter. Mrs. Kezia Peace Kenneth Azuma, she's no stranger to this platform. She's member, Steering Committee, African Women Leaders Network, Ghana National Chapter. Ladies, good afternoon and welcome to The Law.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us.
Very, very, very thankful to have you. So, it's World Human Rights Day to start with. But because we are talking about gender-based violence, I'm aware of the 16 days of activism. First of all, if you wouldn't mind, to tell us why it is necessary to have that.
16 days of activism came about as a result of some violence against some women called the Dominican Sisters. This happened in 1960. Along the line, activists continued to champion issues about gender-based violence and asked that those women's deaths should count for something. It should be the platform for which that barbaric act will be curtailed. Gradually, as the activists grew, in 1999, the UN adopted these 16 days of activism against gender-based violence as an activity that we should hold starting from 25th of November to the 10th of December of every year. So, Africa and Ghana has adopted the CEDAW and Maputo protocols. And these protocols deal with the issues about elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls.
Right.
So that is why we are commemorating the day in these 16 days and today as a Human Rights Day.
How has it been so far? Because today is the last day.
Yes, it's been, for Owlin, it's been very excellent. We've had a number of engagements. On the 28th of this month, I think on the 28th, we went to APSA to raise the flag, the orange flag, to educate the women who attend the bank that they must know that the world must be oranged. Orange means that there should be violence-free,
right,
so that they can go about their businesses adequately. On the 30th, we held a meeting with important women in our nation from all walks of life, from parliament, from the judiciary. The Chief Justice brought her representative, then from political parties, from the banks, and other CSOs also came. In fact, Owlin is an organization that takes care of international and national issues.
right.
We are not a CSO. We do not deal with CSOs in terms of fighting their space. No.
Okay.
We engage governments and engage policymakers at the African and the regional level and the national level. And some of our engagements, my president will talk about them. But on the 30th, we brought about all these women to find out how we can push forward issues about pushing back the activities of violence against women and making sure that our inroads are properly felt by our communities.
Dr. Binga, since this is the first time I'm hosting you on this show, I'd like you to tell my viewers a bit of a background of your experience working in this area.
Area of gender-based violence.
That is so.
I have been in this business for so long.
Right.
As a journalist.
Right.
In fact, I even run a gender desk at GBC. We were talking about this. I had opportunity to go to the UN several times to cover the CSW, that is the Commission on the Status of Women, which is, we meet every year. This year they'll be going again in March to talk about all these things. And before then, I had worked outside this country as a journalist, and I ran a column talking about these same issues. So at my age, sometimes I get so tired talking about the issue is not going away. 28 years ago, we were in Beijing to talk about this, because this whole thing about violence against was one of the critical areas of concern. 28 years after Beijing, so many people went there, and we are still talking about the same thing. And so, as a journalist, I have been writing about this. I have been training, talking to people, advocating. I just finished a program for adolescent girls at Kantamanso, 3-year project, taking these young people through this whole issue about gender and gender-based violence. And I have, in one of the forums, I saw with my own eyes a young girl who was brought that had been violated by her stepfather. And the mother said, oh, it's okay. I mean, if we leave, that was during the COVID-19 pandemic, where everybody was locked down. And I saw this so pale looking.
There appears to have been a surge in such violence, domestic, during the COVID-19.
Exactly. So, as somebody who has been in this field, as a trainer, and then when I moved to Gimpa to lecture, I ran a gender center and I had the opportunity to integrate gender into one of the courses we do. I still go there to teach doctors, nurses, and all other people on this whole issue about gender and gender-based violence. We are still talking about the same thing, and the problem is not going away. And every day, as somebody who has been an advocate, has been a trainer, has been, I don't even know what to say.
We thank God that you don't get tired.
No, because the problem is still there.
And for those of you watching, there's something she said, and I was deliberate in getting to know that kind of background that she has come from. As a journalist, don't say you have to be a lawyer to be able to be at the forefront of some of these crusades and campaigns. In fact, as whoever you are in your home, you can play a role to ensure that gender violence is not tolerated. So the journalists who are watching, whoever you are, you can create a space and influence these issues. When we say gender-based violence, now we say GBV. What are we talking about?
It comes in various forms. In fact, I have a little book that I have here, and I was looking at it before I came.
Okay.
Gender-based violence comes in various forms. The unfortunate thing about gender-based violence is that Every time we talk about gender-based, we talk about the abuse, the beating, the rape, the defilement, and all that. But gender-based violence comes in subtle ways that people cannot even name it because our culture, our tradition, they won't condone this kind of practices. Trokoshi, widowhood rights. In fact, this morning, before I came here, I was reading this whole thing about the widowhood rights, and I was amazed at some of the things that I started looking at, and I said, what has changed since we started talking about this thing? That you use widow, they use the water, you bath the husband and use the water for her to drink. You are locked up in the same room with the person and all, so many things that I read in this book. And I was wondering, are we still practicing these things? Gender-based comes also in the form of female genital mutilation. Mutilation is also a form of gender-based violence. And the one that worries me because it stays with us all the time and we are not able to name it and therefore seek help is the psychological abuse, the economic abuse. People are abused daily, on daily basis in their homes. Not only people, when they talk about abuse, many people say, oh, it's the people, the poor people, the people who are marginalized, but we all experience gender-based violence in various forms. The abuse, look at you, you are useless. What can you do? They don't talk to you, come, good, welcome, then you pass. You
emotional,
psychological.
Okay.
And some of them, they have money. They can give, men can give it to their concubines, whatever, but they cannot give money in their homes. Some of them, they have other, they do all kinds of things to dehumanize the person. But some of them, like I know people, if you even come to the beating, some of the women, when you talk to them, my mother was also beaten. It shows that my father, they take it that because he likes her so much, he has to discipline her so that she'll be of good. So when the husband is beating her, you ask her to go and report. She tells you, oh, if I go to my hometown to tell my parents, or if you say, why? This is normal. Doesn't he give you chop money? Doesn't he pay school fees? Doesn't he do this? Doesn't he buy clothes? Doesn't he buy clothes for you? If he does all this, then a little beating will not kill you. But that beating is killing. The psychological abuse is killing people. The economic abuse is killing people. But they cannot name it. And when you cannot name what you are going through, you cannot seek help. And that is the danger.
Right. Now, Kezia,
yes.
How do, she's named some of them, but how do these gender-based violence manifest? And I'm talking in practical terms, in your work. How do you see them manifest so that those who are watching now can easily tell and also seek help or help?
Okay, so they manifest in various forms. You find a woman coming to you as a lawyer, and maybe you have even taken her on board from another lawyer. And then you go to court and she's dressed anyhow. Because she has very low self-esteem, regardless of whether she's a medical doctor, sometimes other lawyers. Yes, very highly educated women also go through gender-based violence. So you would have to put yourself in her shoes and start telling her that sometimes don't dress like this again when you're coming to court. Don't do this again. Empower yourself this way. Report to DOPSU. If you report to DOPSU and it doesn't work, let me report the DOPSU officer. So those are some of the things. You see that even in the dock, they have a difficulty speaking up because they've been so battered, highly insulted, sometimes by their family members, telling them, hey, why did you take the person to court? You will see. A lot of the women have situations where people abandon them. Even when they are highly professional and they have rented their own apartments, you have people telling them that you will suffer. Your children will suffer because of this. But this man was beating her. Or the man was treating her in very dehumanizing ways that we cannot even describe on this platform. It's so difficult to describe some of the experiences that we have practically. But when you are their lawyer, you find that it takes a lot of grace for them to begin to show up. But the good news is this. When you take up their cases and you start doing it, after some time, when you see your client, they begin to glow. They begin to look very beautiful. I mean, there's a case I'm doing right now, still in the setting court.
Okay.
And it was only at the last agenda that I knew my client could speak impeccable English. There's a client that I've done a case for. She was a chartered accountant, and by the first time I saw her, her hair was all over the place. Her shoes were misplaced. And then when she sat down, she broke down, she started talking. I gave her the tissue like Okujeto would say, give them tissue, talk to them, tell them it's not the end of the world. She said, I've managed this thing. He moved out. He did this to me. He passed here. I was managing it. I took the children abroad on my own. I did this. If you check the passport of my children, they've been traveling. And we put this together. We put that together. He moved out. And I said, oh, no problem. Now he's taking me to court. And I don't have money. And I don't have this. She lamented. I told her that, oh, from where I was taking her from on board, we could do A, B, C, D conditionalities for her. We could go to court under these conditions, so she shouldn't worry. After some time, when you see the same woman, she looks glowing, she looks very wonderful. We've taken some properties for her. She's in a good, comfortable lead. and I want to add that
I like the way you put it.
When we come to say gender-based violence should be stopped, and when we also talk about the practical cases and things, we are not advocating that homes should break. Dr. Binka and I are successfully married. Dr. Binka's children are very successful globally. My children are young, but they are doing very fine. We have other powerful women on the steering committee who are married and who have children who are even global citizens doing extremely well. The point we are making is the fact that as a nation, we are 34 million. It is estimated that 50% of us or more are women. What we are saying is that let there be parity on every front. Let us raise our sons to know that gender roles are not exclusively for women, because the women too have gone into the boardrooms now, and we are asking that the women enter more boardrooms in terms of affirmative action bill, among other things. So when we sit here, we talk about the effect, we talk about the practicalities. We are not saying that if your marriage is not at that brink and it's not going to kill you, come to court. No. We are also not saying that marriages should break. We don't believe that they should break. Me, I'm a very active Christian. Dr. Binka is an active Christian. We believe in the sanctity of marriage. We believe in the principles that the Lord laid down for marriages. The point we are making is that live and let's live. Do not cross the borders. When you look at the Domestic Violence Act, Section 1, I've been trumpeting it the whole week.
Right.
It says that physical abuse means physically to assault someone, to force them. That includes to push them and keep them in a confinement, to prevent them from eating, to make sure they don't have shelter, to treat them in very torturous and dehumanizing situations, okay? Punish them, beyond tolerable levels. Sexual abuse is to have sex with people outside of the normal norm.
The physical abuse you just went through, let me read it in full.
Okay.
So you please pay attention. She was annotating it.
Yes.
You would think that she may be embellishing it. She didn't. It says, physical abuse, this is what it means. Physical assault or use of physical force against another person, including forcible confinement or detention of another person. And you see, a while ago when you were talking and you mentioned women of certain class that people think they don't get affected, like lawyers, doctors, and so on. On the show, either was it Angela Dwamina Boaji or Madame Menka Premo, they mentioned how a particular lawyer judge was suffering this kind of abuse. And I was very shocked.
They suffer plenty. They don't know.
Confinement, and that one was about confinement or detention of another person, and the deprivation of another person of access to adequate food, water, clothing, shelter, rest, subjecting another person to torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. You are now going to sexual abuse.
Yes. No, before you go to sexual abuse, all that you've mentioned, one revelation that shocked me was the kind of abuse that a woman was made to eat feces. The man asked her to eat it. And I went for a program in a tertiary institution to talk about gender, just within these same 16 days of activism against gender, not this year, but the previous years. This guy, I didn't force him because I said, Madam, You people are talking about beating, we are talking about this, we are talking about... Do you know that in my area, where I stay, a man beat the wife to the point that he said, hey, bend your head, eat the feces. I'll kill you. Now it's like, and what did they do about it? He said, nobody said anything because it was about husband and wife. And that for me is the problem. That for me is the problem. When the culture of silence around this whole thing, that if somebody is helpless and cannot do anything about it, the onlookers, they also condone. They are also equally, I don't know, you are the lawyers. Tell me whether there's no law that can, well, maybe there will be no law to compel somebody to help somebody else. And I said, we need to talk. As a society, we are too silent about gender-based violence, and that worries me a lot.
All right. So you go to the next one, because the law defines these forms of abuse in 4 different, categories. There's a physical abuse, there's a sexual abuse, there is the economic abuse, and there is the emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse. So go on with the next one.
So sexual abuse is the forceful engagement of another person to have sex with you without their consent. Now, and then the other form also is where you know that you have an STD or an STI or you have HIV, and you don't disclose it to the person and you have sex with them. You are in violation of this law. Okay? Then we come to economic abuse, where a person you deprive the person or threaten to deprive them of financial provision or their portion of movable or immovable property in which they have a material interest, or you are hiding same from them. So essentially, if a spouse is with you and you acquire property and you are trying to deprive them, you are in violation of this act. Or if a child is entitled, the fact that she's a girl does not mean that she should lose out on the properties of their parents, whether or not they were born in wedlock or outside of wedlock. In Ghana, there are no illegal or illegitimate children. Then emotional abuse is couched this way under the law. It says verbal or psychological abuse, namely any conduct that makes another person feel constantly unhappy, miserable, humiliated, ridiculed, afraid, jittery, or deprived, or feel inadequate or worthless.
Right.
Then the law goes to deal with harassment.
Right. So earlier you were talking about the emotional side, and here is what the definition of the law is. Verbal or psychological abuse. Any conduct that makes another person feel constantly unhappy. You shouldn't put anybody in such a situation. Constantly unhappy. You make them feel miserable, humiliated, ridiculed, afraid, jittery, or depressed, or to make them feel inadequate and worthless. People suffer this.
A lot. In fact, this is what brings a lot of the people to court. Some of them, they never get beaten. But the way they will be treated, first of all, the person will say, don't work. I'll take care of you. Then the woman who is...
In the name of love.
Yes.
The woman is the one who will understand that, oh, it's okay, I don't have to work. My man wants me to take care of the home and the children. The children
are young, and I am always coming home late, so somebody must be at home.
Right.
And there's this
which is a good thing to do.
It's not wrong. In fact, I personally believe that 2 of you cannot be in some particular employment and be doing rat racing and leave your young children. That's my personal philosophy. But it depends on how you discuss it in your own homes.
Right.
However, if one person decides to step down, it means the other person must find the money to meet up the other party. So you don't come where someone has stepped down and they come and say, what did you bring? How much have you contributed? In most of those cases that we do, you find that it is the women who step down and then the men come and say, how much money did you bring? Sometimes even councils on the other side. When you go into a settlement meeting, they will come and ask that kind of question. And then for me, if you ask my client that kind of question, that's the end of that meeting. Because I just tell my client, let's go. You see? But so you find that women are accepting that they will take up that role, and then 17 years down the line, 18 years down the line, 20 years down the line, when they become older, they become much more extremely dependent, they start telling them that I don't have money. I can't do this. Then the children are older, so every money is channeled towards the children directly. They force the children to be very disrespectful to these women who do not have the means they call them all kinds of names, eventually separate from them and divorce them and tell them we didn't even have anything together. So if they do not have lawyers who are smart to lift certain veils, then there will be problems.
Right. So you're still here on the law. This is your legal light. It is your health law. And we are having a discussion about gender-based violence and how it impacts negatively on families, on homes, on a nation, and what can be done. My guests are Dr. Charity Binka, who is chairperson, African Women Leaders Network, Ghana National Chapter, and Mrs. Kezia Peace Kenneth Azuma, who is member, steering committee, African Women Leaders Network, Ghana National Chapter. Yes, we are talking law. Quite a bit of it we have spoken about here. But Doc, your emphasis in these 16 days of activism to bring attention to this is not really to narrow the thing to law. That you do this, you get arrested, you get put in prison and all of that. That's not your emphasis. Your emphasis is that we must become aware and stop.
Yes.
How do we go? How do we achieve that?
That's the education that we need around this. Because when I was listening to Kezia, we're talking about the law, what was going through my mind was how many people can even afford to go to see? They don't even know where to go. In fact, in our country today, we have several laws, acts and everything that seek to protect women. If I was counting a number of them, even starting with the Constitution, right down to the Domestic Violence Act and all other wills and interstate succession law, all these things, they are there to protect us. But some people do not even know that these laws exist. And that is why I think that we need to there should be more education in the churches, in the mosques, in the districts, in marketplaces. We need to do a lot more of work because as a country we should bow our head in shame that we are still talking about we are talking about women being killed. Every day you open our dailies, that a boyfriend has poured acid on somebody, a husband has macheted somebody, has killed somebody, put under bricks and all those. And I'm asking myself, how can we be doing this? And I was listening to, she was talking about economic violence, why people say the women should, the wives should stay home. And they say, I find it's so difficult for this to work in our part of the world. You know, in the other developed countries, everything comes to the same pot. Whether the woman is working or the husband is working, it goes to the same account. By the time you take even $1, click, the other person knows that, this person has taken money. So, honey, what happened? You spend this money? Yes. Oh, yeah. So everybody is aware. And
it's not too difficult to pause work and resume at another time.
Exactly.
Yeah, you may just lose your work completely and never get back.
Exactly. That is the problem. So our system is not set up for women to just say, oh, you see, when you were talking about people stay home because of love, and I'm asking myself, is it really because of love? It's because of inconvenience for the man, whereby he can just carry his bag. Oh, the morning, so okay, we are going to Takrari tomorrow, right now. And he can go, knowing that there's a glorified maid in the house who will take care of them. Because some people do not treat their wives as wives. It's because the Bible says that the man should love the wife as Christ loves the church, unconditionally, and present her without wrinkles, which means that he must not be stressed, she must not be harassed. And then when you do that, it's so easy for the woman also to submit. But so the man wants a woman. Most of the young people we talk to, they want to marry because the woman should come and cook, clean the house, wash, make sure everything is in order. And then the only difference between that person and the house help is because she will have the opportunity to share his bed. That's why he becomes the glorified one. But all the other ones, so when you are not doing what is expected of you, then the slap comes. Where's my food? You have just come, there's no food, you are doing that, they start beating you. How can you be beating somebody who you love? That's the problem. So I think that women, because there's a lot of stigma around this whole thing about abuse. For instance, if I come and tell you now, oh, my husband has been beating me, everybody will hear about it. They say, hey, this fine lady, you don't know, they're going to be beating her. So because of that, we have very important educated women who cannot talk about this. Even in the villages, they just keep it and they die slowly. So we need to do a lot more of awareness creation that people must speak up. If you don't, even the Bible says it, that if you seek, you will find. If you ask, you will be given. If you knock, the door will be open. But if you keep it and you are being killed slowly, emotionally, physically, economically, how do you get the help? When you go to the police sometimes, they say, these women, you people, this is a matter for their house. Go and settle it at home. You have to respect your husband. This and this. So they trivialize the issue.
That's the reason. That's the reason when we are bringing in the law. That's the reason you have the domestic violence unit, because they have a better understanding. And now we even have the one-stop shop. You know, the best example here in Accra. You know, I'll be right back. We will get to those other aspects.
I'm laughing because I have an example.
We will share with you briefly some of the sanctions that people will face if they don't listen to the pleas and the good reason not to do. Why do you even think about this in a domestic setting? You lift your hand on your wife and what's it? Anyway, so we'll tell you what you may suffer. But remember, that's not their focus. That's not their emphasis. Their emphasis is that let there be parity. Let's work together so we can stop these developments in our homes, workplaces, and elsewhere. This is the law. It's your legal light. It's your help law. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is the law. It is your legal light. It is your help law. And we are looking at gender-based violence, the impact that it has, and what can be done in this. And this coincides with the World Human Rights Day observed today globally. My guests are Dr. Charity Binka, who is chairperson of the African Women Leaders Network in Ghana, and Mrs. Kezia Peace Kenneth Azuma, who is a member of the steering committee of the network. We will shortly just open the phone lines for you to join us, and so you bring your questions and they will respond to them. So there's an interesting provision in the Domestic Violence Act. It says that even where there's consent, somebody agrees to the violence you have committed to them, it is not justified. Section 4, it says the use of violence in the domestic setting is not justified on the basis of consent. Yes. What does that mean?
It means that nobody can consent to be violated. So
why did we need to put this thing in the law?
Yes, because it is there because of a lot of unreasonable behavior and cultural practices that make it look like women must behave in a certain way in the home setting. We also look at children have to submit to certain behavior from their parents in the home setting. So, for example, a husband feels that he's in charge of your body, so he wants to violate it anyhow he wants. We
hear stories that some women, you know, it's terrible to say, so I can't even say it.
And some women too are very violent. That one, we will not talk about.
Not that they are violent, but that they feel
call
good
for
that
the
way.
violence.
They feel good that way. They consent.
Yeah, they call for the violence. Traditionally, they say, beat me, beat me. Beat me. If you are not beating them, then they say, hey, you are not a man enough. No, don't beat them. Because they can be doing beat me. But
so the consent is not justified?
It's not justified.
Even if they have consented, you will still be punished?
Yes, because if they bring you to the court or they bring you to DOFSU and you beat them and there's evidence of the beating, you see, they will give them the police report, police form. Once they sign that form and it shows that you beat them up, we'll just go ahead, start the prosecution. Unless something happens and they go under ADR Act, they beg for mitigation and settlement and things like that. That one can you still compensate them for beating them up. So don't go to a place where you have issues. Don't cross the border.
All right. So we are inviting you to send us call in with your questions as always, and then they will respond to them, as I announced earlier.
Yeah, I just found that point very interesting. And in fact, when we're teaching gender, there's this song in Ghana. I don't know how to sing it. Some that my husband beats me, he tears my clothes, he loves me so, he beats me. So it's all about this kind of cultural orientation. We need to reorient the minds of people. People are actually caged. They need to be liberated, because violence in any form is not acceptable, whether you consent to it or not. But those who wrote this I'm not a lawyer, my disclaimer is that, but I believe that because of who we are, the Africans that we are, the cultural setting we come from, there will be somebody, a woman, who will think that if my husband beats me, like this song that I'm telling you about, that if my husband beats me, then he loves me. In fact, even in some cases, after the beating, that's when the love is even greatest that night. You see?
Will this not be long ago? In today's Ghana, will you find people who
there are some, at the beginning of this discussion, I told you that there are some people, but not necessarily the physical beating, but there are some people who are going through a lot of, they are enduring all forms of violence which they cannot name. And that is why we need to begin to say that, look, if your husband does this to you, he shouts at you, screams at you, tells you are useless, and always constantly doing that, it's an abuse. Don't keep it to yourself. At the workplaces, sexual harassment is so pervasive. I didn't even know, in fact, when I was younger, I didn't even know that when a man meets me and starts squeezing my hand and scratching my palm, and how are you? Hey, how is this? Every time. In fact, there's a man who was doing that to me. Anytime I saw him coming, I had to run, because you squeeze it to me. So my concentration was more on the pain rather than naming what I was experiencing as harassment. Sometimes you are going, some of the young ladies, they slap their buttocks, they say, oh, hey, you are looking, saying, don't do that. But constantly they are doing that. That is harassment. That is harassment. Somebody punches your breast. That's harassment. And you would think that, oh, the person is just, he just admiring you. That is not admiration, because you did not ask for it.
Because you are not in any intimate relationship or marriage with them. They do not have the right to describe your body. They do not have the right to touch you in ways that are offending to you. Especially in the workplace. We are not in a relationship in the workplace. We are not in a marriage relationship. We are just working. So if I come to work, don't describe my lips, don't describe my bust, don't describe my shape. Don't talk about the parts of the women in a way that is offending, that will make them feel uncomfortable. When you do that, it affects productivity. ISA did a research in 2019 and said that domestic violence is accounting for the country losing about 18 million USD, which at that time was 73 million.
19 million.
Yes, well, some of the documents said 18.9, 19 million thereabouts.
Okay, just hold on briefly. Ernest, you are calling us from Ashaiman. Yes, honestly, what is your problem? We just lost Ernest. Ernest, you called us from Ashaiman. You can call back, we'll pick your call, and the questions that you are sharing also on social media, we'll share them with our guests. But first, let's begin with those of you who want to ask the questions directly to our guest. Yeah. Hello. Okay. Yes. Who is on the line?
This is Bright.
Bright, where are you calling from? Sorry, Bright, you're calling from where?
Sogakope.
Sogakope. Okay, let's hear you.
Okay, please, something. I'm much happy about the program that you are doing. It's very educative. And then we are learning from you. I like the program. We continue with the program. Okay, I want to ask a question. If your woman used to disturb you, even to the extent of you beating her, and you said you are not going to beat her, but later you decided that you won't touch her or do anything to her, but there was a time she provoked you, and then you want to slap her, but you don't know. Unfortunately, your hand touched her and then she fell down. Then she went and reported to the police that she should arrest you. Is it good for you to stay with this woman or to divorce them.
All right. Thanks for your question. Who is next on the line? The line has been beeping. Yes. Is that Dabaya? Oh, that's Bright. Okay, thank you very much. What will be your immediate response to Bright?
Oh, when you mistakenly slap her and she reports you to DOFSU.
Mistakenly?
Yes, mistakenly. That's what they come to say all the time. DOFSU is not interested in dissolving marriages. They're interested in resolving the disputes in their homes. So this action of maybe giving her a brush is a misdemeanor. So you may be asked to compensate her, giving a warning, among other things, not to continue. Not to continue. We are not encouraging you to be giving anybody brushes, but don't divorce them. Just try and make sure that you go through counseling, reform your minds. The Bible says in Romans chapter 12, today is Sunday, 1 and 2, that we should renew our minds. So renew your mind, the two of you, concerning issues about beat me, and provocation and insults, among other things in your home, so that the home will continue. So our discussions are not saying that when somebody reports you, it means that they have crossed the Rubicon, so you must divorce them. No. Reporting actually means that they need help, they need protection, they need guidance, they need some counseling for you and them. That is why they go to report.
I just want to add that
the law actually in section 24 talks about the promotion of reconciliation. If it happens that the matter has been brought to the courtroom, even the judge is expected to see how they can try, because it's a family or domestic situation. But when it's not that one,
I'm just wondering, how do you mistakenly slap somebody? The arm is not like a machine that somebody will propel. I think that the problem many people are having is that most men think that their wives, they are their properties, so they must do whatever they like with them. Secondly, there's no communication. I think what we are calling for is more communication between partners, because families are even up in arms, so we need to talk more about those.
Dr. Vega, kindly hold on. Dauda, you're calling us from Alberta, Canada. Let's hear you, Dauda.
Yeah, good morning, Samson. Sorry, it's afternoon in Ghana. Samson, mine is just a concern with regard to how we pick up gender and domestic violence issues. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes. It looks like the education mostly is geared towards the issues of women. And there are a lot of abuse. Men also face a lot of abuse, both especially in the domestic setting. And sometimes we feel like talking about the kind of abuse that we face make us become some kind of public ridicule, because the perception is that for men, how can you come to say that your wife has beaten you? Or how can you come and say that, oh, you have been abused in the house in a manner that is coming out by offensive? And so because of that, you find a lot of men not picking up. And mostly with the education, I just realize, we see that mostly they just talk about women. There should also be some kind of conscious attempt to look at the other forms of abuse.
Thank you very much. Your concern is duly acknowledged. Who is next? All right, so let's quickly look at the concern that he's raising.
Okay, let me start before you come with the law. I think he has already answered that question. He said that they don't report it when they abuse. So if you don't talk about it, who knows about it? Because the statistics show us clearly that the violence is perpetrated mostly against women. And we are within the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Probably when we start hearing more from the men as to the form of violence they are experiencing, that just stops us from also having another period for 16 days of activism against the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. You see, so
it is acknowledged that
more women.
It can happen both ways.
Both ways.
But we all know the truth.
Yes.
That 99.999% it's the women who physiologically, everything else, suffer it. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in my limited experience, a few men suffer abuse. When they report it, he's right. The posture is not as how we would like it. from another organization that I belong to, we've been educating DOFSU, and we believe that they are improving gradually. But the men do not report. Most of them do not report.
That's the issue.
And some of the offenses that you claim are perpetrated against you, under Section 98 of the Criminal Offences Act, a woman cannot rape a man under our laws. So until we amend the law and things like that, you cannot go and report rape. So if the woman comes and say she wants to sit on you, run. That's what the Bible is saying. I don't come and allow her to sit on you, finish, and come and say she were raped. No. You cannot say that under our laws right now. So please, we acknowledge that we are in the 16 days. We also acknowledge that the violence against women is higher. And the women are actually weaker vessels. We have been conditioned to rely on the men and things like that. And then the ideologies are, we have to play a certain role. And that is why we go through what we are going through. But we are saying that live and let's live. Let's allow parity to happen. What we do to me that, what I do to you that you will not be happy, we don't do it to me.
Right.
That's what we are saying.
I think they are perceived as being weaker vessels. Not so much that they are weaker, but they are perceived. Yeah. And that's why some of them, they can even, the men who beat them, they can beat the men, but because they themselves have been socialized to think that they are weaker, they can't even tie the power. What we are saying that whether you are weaker or you are stronger, stop the violence.
What are you at the network saying about the anti-witchcraft bill that Parliament, through private members' bill led by Francis Xavier Sosu and 2 or 3 other MPs, successfully got Parliament to pass, and then the President is not assenting to it because he has issues with some of the descriptions in there?
Article 108 has to do with cost implications, among others. My limited experience of what I have read about that article. So, but we are praying for in terms of what Arlene thinks is that we are happy that Ekua Dente's death in July 2020 has yielded an excellent act, which has amended sections 62316 of Act 29. We are very, very excited that you cannot be a witch doctor anymore under the Act. You cannot call anybody a witch. You cannot name people. You can't even suggest.
It has not been assented to by the President. That's the issue.
We are praying that it will be, because there are still negotiations going on. Just last Friday, we were at the meeting at the British High Commission discussing some of the issues about that bill and other bills that we are praying that as persons and who have powers to deal with the umbrella issues in African and then the regional levels, we would ensure that the appropriate pressure and appropriate negotiations, appropriate discussions are held for the assent to happen. He has said that they should put in certain mechanisms for him to assent, and we pray that all stakeholders will do that.
I think it's something that our network, African Media Leaders Network, will take up in January going, because we have had some interaction with the President on other issues, including the affirmative action bill. Soon after we visited him, we saw that the bill was sent to Parliament. And this is also an issue. For instance, we are very excited about the bill, the fact that Parliament has passed. But my concern has also been the fact that we need to make sure that these women will be supported. Because remember, as soon as this bill was passed in Parliament, one woman was dragged from her house and killed on suspicion that she's a witch. So this time, the woman didn't even have I'm not saying because of this bill.
Right.
But people are saying, if they have passed this thing, then we should as well just eliminate them on the spot. So we need to get them shelters. We need to have structures that if you are feeling uncomfortable because people's eyes are on you and you are at risk, you may be killed, you can run to somewhere and not. But this one will be a state thing and a state arrangement so that people can be safe. So we don't know. I don't know what the issues are, but I'm sure the doors of the President will certainly be open for further negotiation, and our network is something that we will take up and maybe have a discussion. The President has the advisor on gender, and so we
right. It does appear that even if this one is not passed, another one will be done in the name of the executive and taken to Parliament to be passed. Interesting times. So thank you very much for coming. All those who are listening to you, in a minute or so, somebody in a situation, live, practical situation, what should they do?
Oh, there's a Dovsu one-stop shop this afternoon. I want to thank ACP Usua and her team in Plan Ghana and all those who have helped that to happen. When you go to the Dovsu one-stop shop, if you're in Accra, everything is there, from the doctor who will examine you, to the psychologist who will take care of your mind, to the police investigator, to 2 courts, the circuit and the district courts, where we have been practicing it. It's very beautiful to be in those environments. In the districts, wherever you can be found, when you suffer from any form of abuse, go to Dovsu and you'll be taken care of. Don't go to the regular police stations because they do not have the training to look at domestic violence.
The
and
Dovsus are
violence.
situated in the regular police stations.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that
All right.
go to the Dovsu units.
When you go there,
Don't
ask for the
report-
unit.
Correct. Don't report to the regular policeman.
All right.
I was just going to
All
say
right.
that.
Thank you. Yes.
You have a right to be you.
Right.
You have a right to life. And those who and the ministry, the gender ministry, they all have hotlines. And they have a telephone number. You can call from any part of the world.
All right.
We will leave these numbers with you so that your subsequent you can
All right.
you can popularize it.
Thank you very much. My guests have been Dr. Charity Binka, Chairperson, African Women Leaders Network, Ghana National Chapter, and Kezia Peace Kenneth Azuma is a steering committee member of the network. This has been The Law. It's your legal light. It's your help law. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. We'll come your way again next week. Have a good afternoon.